Hey all, welcome to your first year of drum lessons, week 24 drum pad edition. My name is Penny Larson and I am really happy to have you with me today. Today we're going to finish up Crazy Army. We're going to introduce a new time feel, we're going to think of it as a new rhythm, but it's the door into a whole new way of thinking about our time feel, and that's clave. And we're going to introduce two clave patterns plus a variation, and we're going to talk a little bit about technique because it's been a little while since we checked in on technique, and I want to touch on it a little specifically. A question I had a few weeks ago was asking about playing double stroke rolls on floor toms. And that's something it's funny because I love to do it. Musically, it's something I don't get to do very often because double stroke rolls on floor toms can sound very out of control for a lot of reasons. The drum can either not be able to handle just that many notes without turning into a kind of a low-end thuddy blur, or even if the drum can handle it, a lot of times the music can't. If you think of something like Sing, 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 right, with Gene Krupa pounding away on the floor tom, dum, 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 right, that takes over the whole band. And so if the band isn't willing to be taken over by the floor tom, you have to be careful about when you play that many notes on the floor tom. And yet, I think being able to play double stroke rolls on your floor tom is a really great way to make sure that your double stroke rolls on your snare drum are totally under your control. Let's say you want to play double stroke rolls on the hi-hat. The hi-hat is surprisingly muddy when it comes to playing multiple notes off of. You think that a cymbal, because it's metal, is going to have a lot of rebound. Cymbals in general, a heavy ride has plenty of rebound, but from a medium ride thinner, even ride cymbals can be a little like walking in sand, trying to get the stick off of the cymbal. You have to do some of that work. Hi-hats, because of their nature of being closed like that, and the top cymbal usually being not all that heavy and stiff, has some give, which is part of what makes a hi-hat sound like a hi-hat. But that also means that it's not going to give you back as much rebound as you think it might. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is play on a pillow. And I have a moon gel pad, which is, if you've ever used those little squares of moon gel on your tom heads or snare heads, moon gel also makes pads made out of that same gummy material. It's really gushy, and it has very little rebound. It actually probably has a teeny bit more than a pillow. So if you do this on a pillow, you're going to have even better results than my moon gel pad. Although I'll tell you, when I was little, they didn't have moon gel pads, so I played on pillows all the time. I still will practice on pretty much anything I can get my hands on, and I take each different rebound that the surface offers as a challenge to adapt, right? If you want to play on a tabletop, that's a certain amount of rebound. That might be similar to like a marching snare drum, right? If you want to play on a pillow, that might be similar to a floor tom with a really loose head. And so what we're going to do, I'm just going to play, I'm playing really loose. I'm holding on in that second finger fulcrum position, right? So I'm not even really relying on my first finger at all right here. And I'm just letting the stick die, just to sort of feel how that rebound is working for my stick. And again, the pad is giving me a little, right? but I'm not convinced that I'm not helping that at all. But I think that's mostly the pad. So I'm getting one little bounce off of the pad, and then it instantly dies, right? Okay, so I'm not going to get any help from the pad, or very little. My stick is going to go in, and it's going to try and stay there. And so what I've got to do is figure out how I'm going to lift that stick and get it back down. Okay, and we've talked about this a bit with that open-close thing that we've been doing. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. But I'm going to take it one step further now. I'm going to also go back to using just my wrists. And the reason I want to use just my wrists at first is because this, more than anything else, will help teach you how to loosen up your wrists to get these doubles. If you can make double strokes just with your wrists, then adding in your fingers, adding in the bounce, adding in anything else, that open-close technique or a molar type technique or any of the other technical tricks you can do to get doubles, will only make your doubles that much smoother and that much stronger. But if you can get there with just your wrists, you're going to have that freedom to work off of. It's very tempting to try and force your way through this. And if you do, not only are you not going to be able to go as fast, that's when you run the risk of hurting yourself, right? You don't want to tense up. As much as I'm going to try and hold on with my fingers, I'm not going to tense, okay? The faster I want to go, the more relaxed I have to be. If I tense up, right, and I do that sort of like Tyrannosaurus Rex arm thing, right, then I've reduced myself to just from here down. I mean, I can still do it, but that's me tense, right? But here it is relaxed. So my forearms are contributing a little. So even though I'm just using my wrist, right, I'm talking about from here down, but I'm letting from here up stay relaxed and interact freely as it wants to, okay? So even though I'm just using my wrist and not using my fingers, as I speed up past a certain point, my forearms are going to get a little bit involved. It's still mostly wrist, right? And like I say, the reason to do this is to just build control, right? We're trying to build up a nice, firm, solid control double stroke. Once you can do that, once you can play relaxed with your wrists, and it doesn't have to be as fast as mine, okay? You'll know because you'll be able to do it for a few minutes without killing yourself, right? If you're playing like this and you're wearing yourself out like really quickly, that's a good sign that you're too tense. Okay, so now let's talk about getting our fingers involved. There's a few different ways to do this, and we're going to talk about the way that I do it mostly, okay? I could show you a couple different things for right now. I don't really want to confuse the issue too much and try and show you everything. So let's just think about the way that I do it. And I'll tell you the way that I kind of learned this by accident, just two ways. And I'm pretty sure we've definitely talked about one. I don't know if we've talked about the other. So the first is just accenting the second note of the double, okay? I got that from drum corps. They didn't really tell me that I I mean, I knew it was a double exercise, but they didn't really tell me, oh, you're trying to develop your finger control for that second note. But the other way that I sort of developed this technique was a drum instructor that I had as a teenager who told me about how they had slowed Buddy Rich videos down, and that on his first note, his fingers were opening off the stick, and on his second note, his fingers were coming in. And I mean, we didn't have all the video resources available then that we do now, so that was pretty much the description he gave me of what was happening. And so for a very long time, I literally was still holding on tight with my thumb and first finger and would open my hand like that, and then would just pull my fingers in, desperately trying to get any sound from my second note. Gradually, I developed the technique that I have today, which is, so I'm going to make a note pretty much with my wrist. When I'm playing it fast, I'm thinking about that first note as being with my wrist, and then the second note with my fingers. And so the first note I'm playing, and I'm letting the stick bounce up. And on a surface like this, we already said it's not going to bounce as much as I want on its own. So I'm also going to have to lift a little to get it up to where I want it. And then now I've got my, we talked about this before, I don't really hyperextend my wrist either forward or back, right? I want to keep my wrist right pretty much in, this range. When I see other people do this and it looks so natural for them, my wrist really doesn't like being that extended. So I try not to go much farther than here and much farther than here, okay? If I get all the way down to here, usually that'll just be for a note or two. I am not trying to make this position a part of my technique. Okay, a lot of people do, and watching them is fascinating because it's clear to me that for them this is a very relaxed and comfortable position, and I'm having to force my hand down this far, right? I mean, you can see this is me relaxed, right? This is as relaxed as it gets. It's not a right angle for me, right? There are people who just have that right angle. So when I make that first note and get into that second position, that finger open position, then I'm going to pull with my fingers to get that second note. And if you're doing this on a surface without rebound, it will become very apparent whether you're making that second note through control or if you're trying to rely completely on the stick rebound. And rebound is awesome, right? Rebound is our friend, and we're going to talk about more ways in which we can dance with rebound. But a lot of surfaces that we drum on don't really rebound super great. And so we want to be able to compensate for soft rebound. And playing on a pillow, playing on a moon gel pad, any of these lower rebound surfaces will help with that mightily, okay? So there's two ways to do this. One is to just start out very slowly and don't overthink the technique too much and just play and just let your fingers kind of work through that down up thing. I'm not thinking about technique too much right now. I'm trying to make even notes, trying to make them about the same height, and I am trying to stay as relaxed as possible. And I'm not thinking about, like I was at first, keeping my hands on the stick the whole time, right? My fingers on the stick. That's a little bit of a misnomer. My fingers are basically touching the stick the whole time, but my hand is opening. My fingers are opening and then closing in a very natural way. I'm not overthinking about it. And then as I speed up, I'm using a combination of wrist and fingers now. And now I'm having to work a little bit harder. I'm squeezing a little bit more. I am trying to get as much rebound as I can out of the surface. But I'm trying to stay as relaxed as I can and getting as much bang for my buck as I can out of my fingers. I'm feeling it a little up here, which here is an okay place to feel exertion, but not pain, right? Really anywhere. If you're feeling pain anywhere, you're tensing too much, you're using bad technique, any of these things are true, right? An important thing for you to develop as you learn really any physical skill, sports, any instrument, you need to tell the difference between fatigue and pain, okay? Fatigue can feel like pain, but fatigue is a natural part of the improvement process. Pain means you're hurting yourself, and either you're going to need to do something like, rest for it to feel better and then figure out a new technique, or, in a slightly more severe case, ice it down, or even in a more severe case, seek medical treatment, right? So we certainly want to avoid medical treatment, okay, at all costs if we can. But it's nice to not need to ice your muscles down too, right? And it's nice to not need rest, time away from practice, okay? So if you're feeling pain, try and figure out what's going on. This is one of those times where a video lesson is a little limited because I can't see what you're doing, okay? I have to trust you. If you're feeling pain, figure out the difference between pain and fatigue, and if you're feeling pain, to figure that out. So really, there isn't too much new technique per se, but playing on a pillow, playing on a moon gel pad, playing on something with no rebound, it's a little bit different approach to the technique we've already learned, okay? Remember, don't skip the step that's like moderate, okay? Just because we're playing on a soft surface and, it's not going to give you any rebound, don't feel like you have to go crazy slow. This isn't crazy slow. I mean, you can do this. This is cool. This will help you get used to the rebound, such as it is, okay? But the tempo I'm talking about is somewhere in that where you're working all the notes, and just stay really relaxed. Let your fingers almost ride the stick as you're having to make all of these motions. And then as you speed up really gradually, your fingers are already going to be doing what they need to be doing and as you speed up, right, your fingers are they're going to be there, and you're not going to have to tense to get any of those speeds. And, it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer to say there's no tension at all. I hate that as drum teachers we're supposed to tell people there should be no tension. The reality is we're trying to minimize tension, right? If I had no tension in my body, I would literally fall off my drum throne onto the floor, right? Because tension is what helps keep muscles in place. But you want this is going to sound oxymoronic, you want a relaxed tension. You want as little tension as possible, okay? And so as you speed up, keep checking in and thinking, am I relaxed as I could be? Am I relaxed as I could be? And if you're not, figure out why, slow down, and just get used to that feeling. No lie, okay, this takes a while to develop. This is definitely one of those things that if you decide it's important to you to develop doubles, and I pretty much said for my whole teaching career that I think developing solid doubles is the most important physical technique for any drummer to develop. If your doubles are really happening, it opens the door to a million other things. Okay, first of all, we use doubles for a lot of things, but just that ability to control the rebound, we're going to need that, right? And so if you can buy in to the importance of doubles and do a lot of, grunt work when it comes to doubles, it really pays off in the long run. It can be a slog, but I'm preaching again. That's part of the deal, right? Is pushing through those sloggy things. Being able to play double strokes on the floor tom is one of those things that has always, I always love whipping that out for people because a lot of people don't take the time to develop their doubles like this, and especially people who didn't march as a kid, right? It really seems like, people who marched drumline as youngins, this isn't all that amazing to them, but people who only played drum set and played double strokes, as part of their drum set lessons, but they didn't play a million marches, they didn't play, right? That for them, playing doubles on a floor tom is like, what are you doing? It's like a magic trick, right? So yeah, don't neglect your doubles, and playing on a pillow, playing on the floor tom, right? If you tell yourself there's this philosophy that, well, I don't want to play on anything that isn't a drum. Okay, so play them on a floor tom, fine, right? I'm a firm believer that practicing on extremes of rebound are going to be good for your playing on drums, and that's my philosophy. If that's not your philosophy, like I say, play them on a floor tom, play them on your hi-hat, play them on the least reboundy parts of your drum set, play them on a crash cymbal, right? But don't neglect developing your doubles, and use some sort of lower rebound apparatus to make that happen. Next, we're going to talk about clave pattern. And I would be lying if I told you I was an expert in clave. One of my former drum teachers, definitely I would categorize as someone who has dived deep into clave. I took a lot of Latin percussion classes at school, but Brazilian music has never jumped out at me on the drum set as something that I want to embody and play. I like to listen to it, but in terms of study, it hasn't been an area that I have dived deeply into. So I'm not going to pretend that I have and teach you as if I have. Having said that, I know these clave patterns, and so we're gonna talk about them, and we're gonna use them, and we'll use them on the drum set too. But part of our first year won't be a really giant Latin segment, because it would be disingenuous for me to do that to you. But to me, I can't go through a whole year without introducing you to clave patterns. So what the heck are clave patterns? Okay, so first of all, clave you might think of as the two little pieces of wood that you hold in one hand and hit with the other hand. But the pattern that they play is also called a clave. And clave is a time feel that undergirds a lot of Brazilian music. And you might think of a corollary as this rhythm that we talked about recently, the shuffle pattern, right, undergirds a lot of jazz and blues in American music. Likewise, the clave pattern is a time field that undergirds a lot of Brazilian music. So there you go. So there's two basic clave patterns, and then there's a third one, which is a variation, which a lot of times gets talked about as its own pattern, but my recent study leads me to believe that it is more accurately considered a variation than its own clave. I'm going to include the Wikipedia entry, a link for clave, just because it was fascinating reading about the clave, and I think that will give you a better kind of top-level intro to what the heck the clave is than I can. Okay? With that said, let's get into the patterns. As always, our worksheet is going to be down below in the doobly-doo. This one, I think, is one you might be able to just forego because these are patterns that probably you're going to get in your ear pretty quickly, and the independence patterns that we're going to do with them are really pretty basic and pretty simple. I just want to get you thinking about the clave as its own part, and so we're going to do some basic ostinatos against the clave. So we've got son clave, rumba clave, and then bossa nova, which is a variation of the son clave. The clave patterns can all be felt in 3-2 or 2-3. And all that means is if I divided the measure in the middle, will I have 3 notes in front and 2 in back, or 2 notes in front and 3 in back? And that creates a little bit of a different feel, right? Imagine if in our rock beat, when we have our bass drum on 1 and our snare drum on 2, boom, bap, boom, bap, boom, bap. Imagine how different it feels when we put the snare drum on 1 and the bass drum on 2. Bap, boom, bap, boom, bap, boom. Right? It's a different feel, and it, you know, if you start in a different spot, it's exactly the same thing, but that's the whole point. A lot of time feel manipulation is about where in the time feel you start. And so let's just talk about all 6 of these patterns first before we do them with the ostinato patterns. So the son clave is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and 4. I bet you've heard that before, even if you've never heard the word clave before. The 2-3 version is 1 and 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a. So that's son clave. The rumba clave is almost the same. The third note, instead of being 1 E and a 2 E and, is delayed 1/16th note. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and 4, and then it ends the same, and 4, okay? 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and 4. And the 2-3, like the son clave, just turns it around, starts with 1 and 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. And then the bossa nova, which is the variation of the son clave, is the same as the son clave, except the last note is 1/16th note late. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. And then the 2-3 version is 1 and 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 and 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. And so what we're going to do, you notice this is similar to the sheet we had with the introduction to two-hand independence, except now the top line and the key at the top I have is one hand, and then the bottom line is the alternate hand. So you should play these both ways. And I'll do that for you quickly just so you can see how that sounds. So what I'm going to do, I'll start with my left hand playing the ostinato. All it's going to be is straight eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm going to play these patterns against the eighth note. So number 7 is 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4. And then the 2-3, number 8, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. The rumba clave, number 9, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and and the 2-3 version, number 10, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and and finally the bossa nova, number 11, 2, 3, 4. And the 2-3, number 12, 2, 3, 4. Now let's do that backwards. So I'm going to play my right hand on the eighth notes, and my left hand is going to play the clave pattern. Number 7, 2, 3, 4. Number 8, the 2-3, 2, 3, 4. Number 9, 2, 3, 4. and the 2-3, number 10, 2, 3, 4. And the bossa nova, number 11, 2, 3, 4. And the 2-3 bossa nova, number 12, 2, 3, 4. I should say, like when we were doing the 2 against 3 polyrhythm, you want to be able to feel the clave pattern as its own separate rhythm. And you want to be able to almost let go of your counting and still keep the rhythm precise, but the clave is a very organic feeling, kind of time feel. It's all about dance and movement, and probably one of the reasons that clave has never super spoken to me is because when I'm playing, I want to be pretty precise with my rhythms, and clave is precise, but it's loose in a particular way that my brain just kind of hasn't warmed up to, right? Who knows, maybe when I'm 80, I'm going to discover my long dormant love of Brazilian clave music and dive deep into that pool, right? So this is not in any way meant as oh, this music is bad, but just as there's too much music in the world, right? And you just can't deeply study everything. And all I'm trying to say is clave is a time feel that I haven't deeply studied. What does Mike Johnston say? He's stealing it from someone else. So, but fellowship, I think. I definitely have not fellowshipped with clave, right? I have not lived with this music in the way that I have, progressive rock, say, or drum corps, or classical, or like those styles, right? Or even jazz, honestly. I've never gone as deep with jazz as maybe I would like, but I've gone a lot deeper with jazz than I ever have with clave. Okay, so now we're going to do our next ostinato pattern, which is just 16th notes. And this one I'm only going to play one-handed for you because I think you get the idea of you want to alternate these with both hands. So I won't beat the demonstrations to death. But so number 13, I'm going to play 16th notes of my left hand and the clave pattern, the son clave 3-2, with my right hand, and that sounds like this: 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. And the 2-3, number 14, 1, 2, 3 and a 4 and a. And the rumba clave, 3-2, number 15, 1, 2, 3, 4 and a. Number 16, the 2-3 rumba clave, 1, 2, 3 and a 4 and a. and the Bossa Nova. 3-2, number 17, 2, 3, 4. One and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. And finally the 2-3, number 18. 1, 2, 3 and a 4 and a. And so if you can play all of these patterns, when we take the clave to the drum set, which we're going to start with, if not this Friday, next Friday, it will be a lot easier to apply these patterns when we need to start doing some real independence with it over there. Lastly, today we're going to finish up Crazy Army, and there will be a link to the Crazy Army sheet music down below in the doobly-doo. We're going to do part 2 today. Part 2 is fundamentally the same as part 1. The difference is, instead of flammecues, we have 16th note triplets with a 16th note accent at the end. And I can demonstrate that really quickly right at the beginning. Letter A of part 2, I've got my 2 7-stroke rolls, same as part 1, but in part 1 it's, and here it's, right? So there's 2 16th note triplets and then 2 16th notes. So you've got to come off of the 16th note triplet rhythm back into 16th notes to get to the next flam. Okay? And then beyond that, it's almost the same form. Well, it is the same form, but it's almost going to feel exactly the same once you get comfortable with that. A few times we don't do an accent on the last 2 16th notes, right? At the beginning of the second line of part 2, I've got a left flam and then the 7-stroke roll, and then the 16th note triplets, and then 2 16ths that are unaccented into a flam tap and a flam. So let me play the whole thing for you a little slow, and then I'll play it fast, and then I'll play the whole thing for you. So, part 2, letter A, nice and slow. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. One thing I want to talk about right at letter B, we've got 2 7-stroke rolls. Well, we've got a flam and then a 7-stroke roll. We've got another 7-stroke roll that leads right into the 16th note triplets. So from letter B, I've got okay. But the 7-stroke roll already has a triplet feel, right? And 1, and 1, and triplet 1, and triplet 1, triplet, and triplet 1. Right? So you can just keep that same rhythmic articulation going, but now you're playing single strokes instead of double strokes. Okay? Let me play the whole thing for you a little bit faster, and then we'll do the whole Megillah. It's letter A of part 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. See what I'm saying about the form of part 2 really is the same as the form of part 1. This is a really common thing for drummers to do. Play a piece of music and then play the same form, throw in a different rudiment. And it can really change the feel, even while keeping a sense of continuity. It's a great way to do almost theme and variations, or just to keep a march. So marches happen over and over and over and over and over again, right? Because that's what marches are, is marches. And as someone who has marched to 10-mile parades, I can tell you that when you play the same, in my drum corps we call them street beats, they call them cadences, they call them marches, right? When you play the same march over and over again for 10 miles, you're going to want to stop, right? You're going to want to do something to add some variation. And so even doing something like this, throwing in 16th note triplets instead of flammecues, can be a nice way to break the repetitiveness while still keeping, if you were, back in the day, if you were keeping an army in line without confusing the army and keeping them moving, without confusing the horn line or the color guard. No offense, horn line and color guard members, but if a street beat gets too confusing, people might have trouble marching to it, right? So you can keep it the same basic form, the same basic idea, just throw other rudiments in. And so let's take it from the very top of part 1 and play all the way through parts 1 and 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so fun march, right? I think. Wicked classic march, kind of, it feels like everybody knows this. That's what happens when Steve Gadd plays a piece at a Buddy Rich Memorial Scholarship concert, is that then everyone knows it. And then all the traditional people make sure they play it, and all the drum lines make sure that they have a cadence based around it, and lots of drum set players play it. I'm actually, for the new Hyperspace record that's coming out, there's a drum intro of a tune that's based heavily on Crazy Army. So that, if you have any questions about that, definitely don't be afraid to ask down below. I think we've talked about all of the pieces, but putting it together might be a little tricky. There are some moves in there that maybe are a little awkward. I like to think part 1 and part 2 really flows nicely from part 1. So if you got part 1, okay, part 2 should honestly be no big deal as long as you're comfortable doing that 16th note triplet to 16th note switch, right? That. Remember, the 16th notes are going to slow down just a little bit, right? 16th note triplets are 1.5 times faster than 16th notes. Okay, so that is going to do it for today's lesson. Please join me on Friday for our drum set lesson, where we will put some of this stuff into practice. And join me next week when we will start a new piece, and we will also start a couple new topics. And I will leave it to you to guess what. We'll also talk more about clave independence next week. Okay, so I hope you guys are well. I hope you are practicing. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Please follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Penny Larson Drums, and please practice. And I'm doing an experiment to see who listens to the end of my videos, because I think my videos are too long and I'm going to shorten them. I'm thinking of shortening them. So if you made it all the way to the end, type down in the comments tuna fish sandwiches. Okay, so because I did a test last week and no one has commented what the end of the video test was, and so I've been sort of enjoying doing these 40-minute drum lessons almost as if you were in the room with me and this is like a real weekly kind of thing. But if that's too much for people and shorter lessons would be more effective for y'all, this certainly would be a lot easier for me to film and edit. So, yeah, so that's the test. What did we say it is? Tuna fish sandwiches? That sounds right. Tuna fish sandwiches. Okay, so I will see you guys all again real soon. I love you so much. Thanks for being with me today. And if you made it to the end, tuna fish sandwiches. Love you guys. Bye.